Welcome to the Wooper Club League Season 13, Week 4 Power Rankings. We are halfway through the season. It's going to be a good look as to who is in a good spot to make the playoffs and who is on the outside looking in. I am IllLogic, your host, coach of the Buffalo Bouffalants, and as always, I'm joined by SteveChuck, coach of the Waterdeep Wobbuffets.
Hey, everybody.
A little bit of a dry spell, but hey, we got some trades this week. Let me tell you what, we're starting off hitting pretty hard and heavy. Big trade here. The Cincinnati Incineroar and the Akron Agrons engaging on some Tier 1 trading. The Incineroar receiving Salamence and the Agrons receiving Gengar here. Just a straight swap of Tier 1 Mons with relatively different roles here, too. Steve, the Agrons just had a lot of success with Salamence, too, closing out their Week 3 games. So this is pretty intriguing there, too. I believe a big difference in how much was spent on these Mons as well, plus with very different roles. How are we feeling about this trade for each side?
You know, it really depends what the teams were getting. It was funny that the Incineroar won Gengar the week before Salamence auction, and both of these teams were bidding on the Gengar, and it got pretty pricey. And then Salamence the following week went pretty cheap, and now they're swapping. So that, in terms of, the economy, the Agrons definitely won that. I think this trade, the reason it went through as it is so easy, was just that both teams saw the other Pokemon and it felt it would work better with the teams they are currently running. I know that the Agrons were looking for something that was a little more of a special attacker. They had a little bit of a focus more on the physical side, it seems, especially in their higher tiers. Although Salamence is still pretty good mixed, but they want a kind of more dedicated special attacker and potentially other things, but I'm not privy to exactly what's going on here. But as far as I'm aware, both teams just wanted the other Mon, so they went for it.
And hey, why not? That's kind of the beauty of this. We have a lot of different Mons available. Why not swap them around a little bit more often? Let's see a few more trades here that happen, actually, too. You already know the Route 1 Burbs are wheeling and dealing, getting rid of the Abomasnow that they'd picked up previously, selling it off to the Boulder Boulders for 4 whole Woot Bucks. Boulders acquiring Abomasnow, and as part of the transaction, dropping that Houndoom that they bid up in Week 1 as well. Abomasnow, pretty cool Mon. It's the third Ice type, I believe the Boulders are grabbing too. Maybe a pretty decent price for Abomasnow, actually. Yeah, it's a grass type, and that has some ups and downs there as well. Setting Hail, Aurora Veil, a lot of neat things Abomasnow can do.
Yeah, opening up that, especially the Aurora Veil and support. And you mentioned the multiple Ice types on the team, getting that Snow defense boost on Avalugg, who definitely needs it, but also Articuno, that could be helpful there as well, giving just another option. It also can be useful to just reset weathers. The Burbs, are working on a little bit on a Sun team here. We'll see in a moment that the Agrons are working on a Rain team. There's a couple Sand Setters about. Just having, a way to reset the weather into, at the very least, the neutral, if not beneficial for you weather, certainly can go a long way. And for the low price of 4 Woot Bucks, especially as, we've been talking about the auctions, it seems money isn't really as necessary anymore. Definitely worth it.
Absolutely, and don't discount the ability to Terra Abomasnow here with being able to get up double screens for free, maybe go into another defensive typing, set up Leech Seed. Ooh, I like Abomasnow. But of course, the Burbs were not done wheeling and dealing on the other side of this transaction here, buying up the Orthworm from my Buffalo Bouffalant for 7 Woot Bucks here. On the Bouffalant side, it may make a little more sense once we see what actually happened here in the auction coming up, but the Burbs, looks like they're finally starting to come to a long-term plan here for some of these Mons here in the lower tiers, selling off the Abomasnow that they picked up almost on a whim, and basically replacing it almost immediately with this Orthworm for 7 Woot Bucks. Orthworm just put in a lot of work for the Bouffalant this past week, Week 3 here. A little bit interesting, we may get rid of it, but again, we'll see why. And as for the Burbs, pretty nice pickup there from Tier 4, yeah?
Very much so. I know a big thing the Burbs have been looking at is the ground weakness in general. A lot of weaknesses, especially in the higher tiers. They do have, or at least neutral. Getting that immunity is great. They do have Hawlucha, but they also really don't favor Hawlucha and have their eyes on some other tier 2s later down the road. I'm not sure if they plan on keeping Hawlucha or if they're going to, drop it the first chance they get. But having that ground immunity somewhere in the lower tiers is fantastic, as well as just a great defensive piece.
Absolutely, some more hazards, a little help with the fairy weakness that he's concerned about, so pretty nice move there for them. 7 Woot Bucks for the Orthworm. Now to move on to the auction results from this week. Did we get anything different this time around? It was pivot week. Every mon available could pivot in some way, shape, or form, and the Burbs once again pivoting around a lot of their options here after selling off Tier 1 previously. Mew for 1 Whoop Buck. We'll, of course, talk about that in depth. And Electrode for 2, obviously worth just a little bit more there from Tier 5 Electrode, coming into the Burbs and swapping out the Cricketune. Music City Mudkips picking up the Tropius. We'd love to see the banana dinosaur tree thing. Would love Tropius there. Wooper Troopers with a lot of moves here, picking up a couple more electric types. Yeah, they've been going through electric types like crazy. The Thunderous Therian for 8, the Tier 3 Rotom Mo for 1, dropping Magneton, and the Uxie for 17, dropping the Whiscash in order to pick up Uxie. A lot of different moves there that we'll have to talk about. Seattle Steamrollers also getting on the train here, grabbing Rotom Heat for 8, real solid Tier 2 Mon there. Boulder is picking up Rotom Wash and dropping Miss Magius 1, ground immunity for another. Real nice there. Coordinate Clobber staying out this time. Oh, here they are. The Illyria Electabuzz getting off the ground here finally with quite a few really nice pickups. The Roaring Moon for 15. This was kind of hotly contested, wasn't it? That was a lot of fun. The Tier 2 Zarude. 1 Whoopbuck. How do you like that? Picking up some more dark types. Rotom Frost, a real nice deal there out in Tier 4 for 1. And the Squawkabilly for 3. You already know that was bid up. Everyone wants the Squawkabilly. Kanto Kanglers with the Ditto for 5. Tier 3, kind of controversial. Wonder if we should have let Terra or not. In the Morgrem for 1. I know that needed to be looked at a little bit more. Nice value down there. Cincinnati Incineroar cannot stop picking up Tier 2s. It's Rillaboom in, out, Glamora. I know there are a couple of teams that wish they had that Glamora, but no more Rillaboom for 1. Newport Nocto's always finding that nice deal. Frogadier for 1. Excited to see what they figure out with that. Akron Agrons, it was alluded to, here is Pelipper. They started off with Torkoal, and now they pick up Pelipper. How about that? Out goes Ursaring, in comes the possibility of rain. Calgary Corviknights picking up Revavroom for 7. Seems like a little bit much, but boy does Revavroom offer a lot of unique tools. That'll be kind of interesting, keep an eye on. Bouffalant, there's the Orthworm replacement. Fortress, the Tier 3 for 5, adding on Rapid Spin in exchange for the ground immunity and adding on a book typing for better or worse. And the Rotom Fan, last Rotom the Bouffalant have to use for 7 Whoopbucks, swapping out the Honchkrow, so that ends up being 2 for 2 with the Orthworm trade. And the Wobbuffets also keeping their hands out of the auction this time around. Wow, a lot of different teams involved, a lot of pivoting, a lot of good mons coming in and out. Steve, are we back to normal yet, or what are we looking at for the Week 4 auction?
Things certainly are recovering some. The average cost of the Tier 1s going back up to 8 after it was previously down to 5 1/3. That was really propped up, though, by the Roaring Moon. I mean, we mentioned some of the other ones, the Mew going for 1, and then the Thunderous Therian for 8. So, you know, a little bit better than it was. Still not quite to those Week 1 levels or even the Week 2 levels of 20 and 12, but looking better. Another key thing about this auction was all of the Tier 1, 2s, and 3s that were available were picked up. I know we had talked about in the previous weeks where Tier 2s were left on the table, but that was not the case here. Just some of the Tier 4s and Tier 5s left behind. Average price overall up to about 5 Whoopbucks spent. So again, we're moving up. People are starting to get rid of the money. That money might actually become important soon enough again. And once again, Tier 3s kind of back to where they were a couple weeks ago, averaging 7. That's a big one. The Tier 2s were down, but the Tier 3s are staying pretty okay. Still more expensive than the Tier 2s, but that's propped up a lot by that Uxie. Was a very much contested bid there, getting all the way up to 17, which, considering how low some of these Pokemon have been going for in previous weeks, it becomes real easy to spend that much on a Tier 3, because what else are you spending it on? You can get a Tier 1 that no one else wants for 1, and it still has value. So really, heading back up this week, but still not at those Week 1 levels.
Yeah, kind of interesting. We are starting to get some of these. The average is coming back up, but we sure are seeing these onesie, twosie bonds here or there that are really bringing that average up. Like you said, if we can just pick up a filler Tier 1 or Tier 2, why not just go all out and focus on those 1 or 2 bonds that we really, really want? Could be crazy the next couple weeks. We'll see for sure as money starts getting tighter or potentially just starting to let loose. Absolute blast this auction format has been so far halfway through. And with that, we have a lot of fun matches to get to. the opening match of an action-packed Thursday of matches. We heard how excited you were. I think it's just safe to say we did deliver, in my opinion, an easy match of the week. Had the Bouffalant not already been featured the previous week, sorry about that, Steve, but luckily that means we get to go over the Bouffalant's big 1-0 win in excruciating detail right now instead. Turn 1, T-Spikes from Glow King going to be answered by an early Terra Poison on Hippo. Second week in a row, the Bouffalant with the super early defensive Terra. Also weird to see Hippo getting hurt by its own sand. A bulky Weirdeer and a bulky paralyzed Hippo getting nowhere. Rotom Fan failing to pair a Glow King 3 times in a row in its Bouffalant debut. Sets up a no-win scenario for the Bouffalant. To make the most of it with Air Slash taking 60% from Terra Ground and Teleon, going down to a combination of Ice Beam and Future Sight. Hippo with a little more chip on Weirdeer and gets healthy. Armor in going for Psychic Terrain. Don't mind if I do, says Slowking, setting up Calm Minds in front of its Galarian counterpart. That's scary. Glowking barely survives and chills out into a banded Zoroark, but Slowking actually stays in and tanks the U-turn. Second time around, Wochen comes in and there's the knockoff. Fancy maneuvering. Enamor's in, it goes down to below half, but does take care of Wochen. Moonblast over Draining Kiss? You're crazy, Steve. You're crazy. Slowking on the free entry, but then a smart double back into H Arcanine on Steve, trying to repeat the play from before. Zoroark not coming in freely in this household. Head Smash misses Weirdeer, who has Intimidate and EQ, but the risky stay and pace off as the Bouffalant finally on the board with the second one connecting. Inteleon in, time for some more fancy switching around. Slowking in on the critical hit Snipe Shot, then Sandy Shocks in on the critical hit Dark Pulse, then Steve's turn as Enamor's comes in on the Earth Power. Out to Hippo, Earth Power crits, takes out Hippo, but that brings in Harkonine. Head Smash KOs Enamor's, and then turns out not banded. E-Speed takes out Inteleon too, and it's suddenly tied up, setting up a fun endgame. Flare Blitz brings Glow King lows at Future Sights, then another good Harkonine play, head smashing into the incoming Armor Rouge. It's a hop, skip, and a jump from here. E-Speed gets Zoroark in range correctly this week as opposed to last. Future Sight takes care of Harkonine. Sandy Shocks KOs Zoroark. Glow King KOs Sandy Shocks with help from Chukka, but the Jotonian Slow King stands at the end, finishing off Glow King to seal a thrilling match and ending another undefeated dream. That wasn't match of the week, I hear you say, but worry not. The great matches keep on coming. Next up were the Route 1 Burbs and the Akron Agrons. No sun was promised in exchange for Torkoal, but that doesn't exclude every kind of weather. Was rain actually the player? Was the ultimate demise of the Route 1 Burbs, who fell to the Akron Agrons 1-0 in an absolute blast of a match to watch? Was that the ultimate downfall? You're going to need to check it out on this channel. Hosted by Michael of those same Route 1 Burbs, the match of the week for week 4. This was so fun. You really need to check this one out. Let's keep up with that theme. What a fun match this was. The Troopers and Kinglers not on our power rankings, but this match was super fun to watch. A 3-0 victory for the Troopers, who get on the board after their bevy of moves. Early rocks from Uxie into a Reflect against Horse, which helps Delphox live a hit. It'll live even better when it gets a burn off on Horse and into Water Taurus pretty freely. Then Funny in on the Zapdos, switch a Nasty Plot up on a Heatwave miss. Yikes. Dark Pulse brings Zaplo, and Heatwave does less than half anyways. Corviknight eating up Barraskewda hits for days. Cresselia setting up Calm Minds. Now hold up. Yawn Uxie is pretty nice stop to that. Another round of Reflect up as Lando gets up rocks too. Bulk up Taurus are going to go in. Close combat will finish off Glass Tree. Then another bulk up to eliminate drops from CC and Lando's Intimidate. Raging Bull will finish off Cresselia too. And now into Ditto for the Revenge. They'll trade CCs about 60% to each other, but Uxie will eat up the next 2 hits and get up yet another Reflect. Screen's putting in some work. Bulk up Corv, but Stone Edge crits through, but Roost means that doesn't really matter. But another crit on the Rotom switch in. Willow means the Lando is neutered too. Lots of physical bulk here, but Rotom finally down to Barraskewda. A couple of Iron Heads will take care of Landorus and beat Barraskewda as a Steel type, trying to make the comeback happen. Tauros easy switch and KOs Ditto in, and well, actually, close combat crits Corviknight on the second hit, then KOs Delphox in the fourth. Intimidate cycling and running it out of PP will work. The struggle finishes off Ditto. Fun match, and the Troopers are on the board. Next up, yet another match of the week candidate, but once again, the Noctiles were featured last week, so again we get to chat about 2 very good teams squaring off, and that's cool to say about the Calgary Corviknight, who almost got in against the still undefeated Newport Noctiles, but they do get away with the 2-0. Immediately, Regieleki 98% off on Thundurus, insane. Regidrago in and does 41 to Tauros. The Regis are going at it. Tauros brings Scizor below half, but Tauros is low. Swap into Ursaluna against Thunderous. Grass not doing 68. Sheesh. Mesprit and Regidrago on the double-double. Terra Fairy Mesprit does 63 and immunes Dragon Claw back. That is huge. Nice Stealth Rock too on the Revavroom switch in, which will Toxic the Tauros back. Breloom in on Earthquake and takes out Tauros. Low Kicks does 25% to Quad Resist Revavroom. Oh my goodness. Out to Breloom on Ursaluna, who falls asleep to Spore. Dancy and Mesprit doubled in, exchanging Fairy moves as the Mesprit will be encoring the Drain Kiss, which lets Ingudra threatening a Steel move, and it does a quarter to Revavroom. Parting Shot out into Scizor on Flamethrower. That's down. Breloom into Revenge, but Choppleberry reduces the damage, gets Gudra another KO'd. When Low Kicks is in, Thundurus is sacked. Revavroom back in, huge damage on Low Kicks. Then Terra Ground to immune Regieleki's T-Bolt and take it out with a Bulldoze. And then Low Kicks doesn't first impression. Bulldoze takes that out too. Was that a throw? Ursaluna out. It's a turn 1 wake up. EQ does massive damage into Diancie, then into Mesprit on Body Press. Dazzling Gleam, Itlo, Drink is Kiss heals it up. They're trading now Encore into Draining Kiss again, and to Gudra, who lives at 3%. Flash Cannon out, and DNC is actually down. Reggie Drago next. It tries D-Dancing to outspeed Mesprit. It just goes down 2. Revavrum finally takes down Gudra, but Ursuluna can tank the last hit and finish off the car. Lots of KOs to Gudra and Revavrum, but it's the Noctows who stay undefeated, the last in the league. But it's finally starting to feel real close. Next up, a pair of 1 and 2 teams with high expectations. It's the Cincinnati Incineroar and the Seattle Steamroller squaring off as fellow quarterfinalists from the Johto Conference last season. And it's the Incineroar that get the win this time, 3-0. Early Terra Fairy from Moltres is pretty neat, and Hisui and Quillfish to set spikes. Quagsire means Volcanic Steam Eruption. Clodsire means Toxic. It gets the Toxic right back on its brother. Moonblast and Iron Treads from Enamorous doesn't do much. Neither does Discharge into Moltres. EQ from Quag and a Gallade doing damage. Then finally good damage from Gallade into Moltres. But Flame Body Burn, that is huge. Salamence does get in for free on Leaf Blade, and Dragon Dance is up. Dual Wing Beat, Scary Trigger, Q-Charm from Enamorous, but does complete the Oko on the now 0 and 4 Enamorous. Cyclists are in. It's Scarfed again. Draco Meteor revenges the Salamence nicely. However, Moltres takes this chance to come back in and roost back up, just as Clodsire does the same. Rotom immunes EQ. Quagsire means Volt Switch. So many immunities in this matchup. More spikes up. Cyclists are in to spin. The Moltres recovers back up yet again. More spikes up from Quag, who's starting to get a bit low despite the recovers, and Cyclists spins again, but gets Toxic for its trouble. Volcanion, not poisoned by Barbarage, finally takes down Quagsire with Flamethrower. Taunt the Dondozo, very cool, but Liquidation does so much to unaware Clodsire. That's a 2-hit KO. Gallade can't touch Hisui and Quillfish even with Terra Grass. Rotom Heat in, misses Overheat. Barbarage finally poisons, and that takes care of Rotom. Gallade is walled by Moltres and disposed of. Volcanion is still doing damage though, but Toxic by Quillfish and chipped down hard. Iron Tredulous into EQ. Cyclozar is 2 KO'd without coming back with Overheat, and Volcanion down 2 by the Dreads. Surprising 3-0 from the now surprising 2 and 2 in the Incineroar. Watch out! Next up, it's the Clobberers getting back on track against the Illyria Electabuzz, the new team on the block, improving to 3 and 1. Turn 1, Spidops, Zarude, first impression, did Zarude. I've seen better turn 1s, but not many. Let's go, Spidops. Dual Screen, Rotom, Frost, and Nasty Plot Slowbro Galar is in into Dragon Dance, Roaring Moon, but Ice Beam is strong enough even through screens. That +2 doing a lot of work. Brute Bonnet in on Dugtrio to wall. Lilligant in on that with a free Victory Dance. Close combat misses twice before finally KOing Cleavor. We've got plenty of chip and Stealth Rock off. That is frustrating. That means it's Spidops time. 59% to Florges. Jeez. Palafin in for free. Flip turns out into Slowbro Galar. Terra Steel Florges with a sub on Sludge Bomb. Okay, I see you. Synthesis up. Moonblast doesn't quite KO Brute Bonnet, who breaks the sub and goes down. Palafin is in. Close combat KOs. Jeez. Into Slowbro on Lilligant. And finally, Quick Draw activates. Down goes Lilligant. Tokyo revenges and back into Palafin for a couple jet punches to finish off Dougie and Rotom. Steve, I know you don't want to hear this, but that is the new KO leader, Palafin, taking the Clobberers to a 3-1 record. Very nice. And finally, another get-right game. This one for the Bulldors, a pretty convincing 4-0 win over the Mudkips. Great Tusk and Samurott trading big hits early, but Tusk outplays Sucker Punch with Stealth Rock turn 2, and then KOing Samurott when it doesn't go for it turn 3. But Raichu gets its revenge. As Elf next. Trick Room, taking a page from the Noctowl's book, U-turn into Avalok against Heatran, a bona fide beast. Some switching games for the Mudkips keeps them healthy aside from Hoopa dropping to a quarter. Heatran in on Articuno, but Terra Blast takes care of that, taking a page from my book there. Tropius in with Terra Grass, Leaf Storm, and Harvest keeps finding that berry. Very cute. Aurora Veil, Abomasnow in. Ice Shard takes care of Hoopa. Tanks Raichu's Focus Blast, and EQ takes care of that. Okay, I see you. Ice Shard KOs Lando, and it's one banana dinosaur against the world. Leaf Storm will KO Avalok. And then Azelf is Whirlwinded in. It will Encore Protect over and over until it can KO with Ice Punch. How about that for the new acquisition? Putting in the work for the 2-2 Bulldors. And that, my friend, is what happened in Week 4. A lot of awesome matches this week. This was an absolute blast. Especially that Thursday where we had, 5 matches in one day? Oh my goodness. That's how I can now get to take a look at the effect that had on the power rankings. Obviously, the Noctowls getting challenged, but they still do not fall. So they remain at number 1. A little bit of a shake-up, 2 and 3 swapping after an awesome match between Steve and myself. Bouffalant up to 2, Wobbuffets at 3. Corviknight still sticking around there at number 4 despite the loss. That was a close match. Number 5, the Akron Aggron staying put through. The Corviknight Clobberers moving back up to number 6. Rowanburg sliding down a little bit to 7, and the Bulldors remaining there at 8 for now. Steve, the top 4 teams all faced off, so it just makes sense for us to stop to go up to those 4 first, and I don't know if we really need to talk about anything else, but I guess we have to. But the top 4 really do deserve a lot of love here. Noctowl's Corviknight was close, Bouffalant Wobbuffets was close, before that Noctowl's Bouffalant was close. The top 4 seems so separated, and these were 2 more just outstanding matches. Go ahead, King, talk about these top 4.
Yeah, I mean we've been talking about them. These teams have kind of separated themselves from the pack, and every week as we're sitting here looking at, what teams should go where in the power rankings, we have a clean line here, and we joke, should we leave 5 empty, because after these 4 it hasn't became clear. Fantastic games, and especially you've been talking about this past week, they played each other, a lot of close games where things are very close and could very much shake up these top 4, but not just shake up who's in the order of the top 4. I think it's going to take quite a bit to shake up who's actually in here. But a lot of these teams, the Wobbuffets and the Corv Knights, picking up their first loss. Of course, both to these other top teams, so not really punished too much in terms of the ranking for it. You mentioned the one change, the Bouffalant and the Wobbuffets swapping. Very much makes sense, as the Bouffalant beat the Wobbuffets this week. The Bouffalant's one loss was to the Knocked Owls, so being right below them is fine. You could argue maybe the Corv Knight belong a little higher, but they did lose to the Knocked Owls, and we don't have direct head-to-heads yet between the Bouffalant and them, or the Wobbuffets and them. However, historical precedents and just what we had last week, we haven't seen enough to shake it up. But these top 4 are close. Knocked Owls, of course, still a little bit out ahead. There's still really no discussion. Even less so now, as they are the only undefeated team remaining. But the other 3, very close. Can very much change week to week based on, maybe someone picks up something very good in the auction that completes their team, or maybe someone has just a good match that really defines what they're doing moving forward. But yeah, very close, very good job so far this season, and excited to see how the rest of the season goes for these teams.
I did mention it seems like the Noctowls are finally within reach. A couple of very close games here against other top 4 teams. Boy, if they complete that trifecta, though, that is tough to ever break down there. It would really take something special, I think, to get ahead of them now, too. But still, they're so close to each other, and honestly, all 4 of them super impressed with a ton of the plays that have been made here too. Nothing against the teams below them, but wow, there's some really good Pokemon being played by these top 4, and it's so cool we got to include the Corv Knight up here. Not one of these our traditional top 5 teams that we talk about so much, but boy, are they really proving that they belong in this conversation right now. Only maybe have a couple more chances to get that signature win to be able to bring them up there. But until we get the chance to see that, wow, I'm very impressed by what they've been doing so far. Nothing to say, though, against the... I think we also had a kind of consensus here, number 5, the Akron Agrons, up to 3-1 after, I believe, losing week 1. They're going on a bit of a tear here. Agron's pretty much known for crushing the early season, maybe falling off a little bit late, but 3-1, hey, no, nothing to scoff at there. Same record as the teams above them, just a little bit separated below there. And hey, they're in great shape for the playoffs already.
Yeah, 3-1's a great place to be. Only loss being to that number 4 Calgary Corv Knight, so still looking fantastic there. And unlike some of these other teams, they have some, good wins against the middle of the pack teams. Wins over the Incineroar at 2-2. Win over the Kinglers at, I believe, 1-3. Win over the Burbs at 2-2. They're not beating the teams. They haven't faced the 0-4 teams, but they have some notable wins that really solidify them up here at kind of the top of the next tier of teams. So looking good. Looking forward to the rest of their season, and maybe they'll get a chance to play one of these top 4 teams and maybe take a crack at breaking in.
And there's the Cloppers. So it's kind of interesting to figure out what we can make of them. You could argue for them to be higher. You could argue for them to be lower. But the competition they faced has been so polarizing so far. It's tough to say they have a signature win or a signature loss that would push them down either. But frankly, for a first season, you're going to start 3-1. Yeah, you're going to make the list. Yeah, you're turning some heads, all right. We're paying attention to the Cloppers a little bit, aren't we?
Yeah, definitely are. As mentioned, 3-1 still a great spot to make the playoffs. It is possible that 3 wins is all people are going to need. So it could be guaranteed here based on how things... It's not guaranteed. It could be possible here, even if they lose out. And, another win or definitely 2, they're definitely in. They do have that one loss, but again, it was to the Calgary Corv Knight once again. So just that one loss. As mentioned, their wins aren't against teams that are doing as well this season. So it's a little more unsure about, how good they actually are. So I definitely am looking forward to seeing them pair up against some of these other middle of the pack teams to kind of help us figure out where they go. But for now, they've beaten the teams they've been paired against by the schedule, and until they have something else, this is where they're going to be.
And speaking of those middle of the pack teams, we have a few to talk about here. A lot of teams at 2-2 kind of bunched up together in our minds. We do keep the Route 1 Burbs up here at the top of those 2-2 teams. We do keep the Boulders here at number 8, but a big shout out to the Cincinnati Incineroar starting to creep into our minds quite a bit here. I had some discussion about having them on here, but they do just fall short of making the list here. Burbs, Boulders, Incineroar, relatively close. We're still highish on the Burbs after incredible success the past 3 or so seasons in the playoffs. Boulders have had some tough losses, but tough to fault them for it. Incineroar, oh boy, here comes the comeback season yet again. As soon as you think they're out, Wugtrio keeps coming back. What do you think about these three?
Yeah, starting off with the Burbs, as meant, they've had a little bit of a rougher season so far. They have, taken a loss to the Wobbuffets, as well as this week's loss to the Agrons. A win over the Electabuzz, which, they're not having a great season, and a win over the Steamrollers, who are also having an uncharacteristically bad season. So it's not super clear where they're going. I know also that their plan for their team relies on a lot of mons that are coming later. They kind of want to fully embrace that concept of their team, so they're not working with their preferred team currently. They definitely have room to still be fantastic. Picking up some key wins in the back half. They have, had a tougher schedule so far, playing 2 of the other top 5 teams. So we'll see how they do moving forward. But right now, they're hanging on. The Boulders, they're actually one of the most interesting 2-2 teams, I believe, because they've lost to the Wobbuffets and the Noctowls. 2 of those top 4 teams as well as top 5 teams. 2 of these, good teams of the league. And those are their 2 losses. They also have, wins that are, not the best values against 0-4 teams Troopers at 1-4 and the 0-4 Mudkips. So they have, pretty even records in terms of teams that have beat them and teams that they beat. So again, looking to hopefully get some of these matches against, maybe the Agrons, the Clobbers, the Birds, the Incineroar, something like that to really kind of define if they're in the upper echelon of that mid-tier or the lower echelon. And hopefully we're able to find out soon. And then, of course, you mentioned the Incineroar. The Incineroar coming with a win against the Steamrollers, going up to 2-2. We just felt that the Boulders and Burbs belonged above them. The Boulders, especially with their only losses coming to those teams at the top of the power rankings. Well, the Incineroar have had losses to teams that are more in the middle of the power rankings with the Clobberers and the Agrons. So just based on kind of the quality of opponents, we felt the Incineroar should be a little bit lower. But again, don't count them out. They're still very much in this, and in a couple weeks they could easily take, that 5 through 8 spot.
And a big shout out to the Boulders. Yes, they lost to those top teams, but those were close competitive games. Hopefully you can get a breakthrough here at some point, but they're a team, I think, in desperate need of a big win at some point to show us that they belong outside of the mid-tiers, as you said. It's going to wrap up the power rankings here for Week 4 again. We're halfway through. If you're 3-1, boy, are you sitting pretty right now. Tough to blow that kind of lead to be able to get out of the playoffs. So here's hoping you can all make it. But we're going to look ahead to Week 5 schedule. Steve, I'm not going to make this easy for you. We all see at the very top, once again, it's the top 4 teams squaring off against each other. Got the 2v4 and the 1v3, Bouffalant, Corviknight, Noctowls, Wobbuffets. I'm not sure what else we can say that we didn't already say last week. This should do a lot to help clear up the top tier, see if all 4 of these teams do still belong here, see if we have good matches against each other. Boy, could this be huge for those shakeups. And frankly, if something bad happens here, I wonder if any of them start tumbling out of control. See if maybe a devastating enough loss can cast you aside, or if you stay strong in these matches and forward. With those 2 matches though covered, what else catches your eye here, Steve?
The key example, the key match I really want to look at is, of course, the Clobbers and Boulders. I had just said both of these teams have wins over teams that aren't doing so well this season, losses to the top teams. Well, here they are, 2 of those teams who are, in the top of that middle tier, trying to stay on the power rankings, playing each other. It'll be a great match to see, and it'll really shine some light on how these teams and the surrounding teams are doing. And if you made me pick a 4th, I'd probably go with the Steamrollers versus Agrons. Steamrollers, the historically strong team that haven't been doing so hot this season, but they have had the Agron's number in recent seasons. Agron's doing better so far, and let's see if they can keep it going against the long-term power team of the Steamrollers.
Shout out to the guy making the schedule this season. Wow, we've just been blessed with so many good matchups here so far. Somehow the top 4 all being matched up against each other in 2 consecutive weeks, plus just interesting matches littered throughout. That'll do it from us here. Thanks again to Steve for doing this with me. Thanks to you all for watching as well. We hope you join us next time as we cover these Week 5 power rankings coming up, as well as the auction and everything that goes with them. We're halfway through, almost at the playoffs, pretty much there. We're going to start seeing some clinches here sooner rather than later. I'm excited. Hope you are too, and we'll see you next time.